In the beginning, when the earth had just been formed, God looked at his creations, the stars in the sky, the mountains on the land, the flowing rivers, and the countless plants and animals, and saw that it was good. But something was missing, something which could rule over all the creatures God had made. And so he formed a being unlike any other. From the dust of the ground came Adam, the first man, created in God's own image. The breath of life filled Adam's lungs, and as his eyes opened, he witnessed an astonishing sight. Before him lay a world untouched and beautiful, a world brimming with life, joy, and the pure presence of God. God placed Adam in the Garden of Eden, a paradise where every tree bore fruit sweeter than you could imagine, and every creature roamed in perfect harmony. Rivers flowed like silver threads through the land, and flowers bloomed with vibrant colors. The garden was alive with the songs of birds, the gentle rustling of leaves, and a soft, golden light that seemed to bathe everything in peace.
"Be fruitful and multiply,"
God said to Adam,
"and fill the earth. Rule over the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, and every living creature that moves on the ground."
Yet despite all this beauty, something was missing. God saw that it was not good for man to be alone. And so, as Adam lay in a deep sleep, God took a rib from his side and created a companion for him, someone who could share in his life, his joy, and his purpose. When Adam awoke, he saw her, the first woman, bone of his bones and flesh of his flesh. He called her Eve, for she would be the mother of all humankind. Together they wandered through Eden with total freedom and purity, knowing nothing about pain or sorrow, sin or shame. The whole of creation was theirs to enjoy, and God himself walked with them in the cool of the day. But at the center of the garden stood two trees that were different from the rest. One was the tree of life, with branches that bore fruit which granted eternal life. And beside it stood the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Adam and Eve were free to eat the fruit of every tree in Eden except this one. God had commanded them not to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, because if they did, they would surely die. Time passed in this paradise, and life was peaceful, joyful, and innocent. But unknown to them, a darkness lurked nearby, the evil serpent, whose whispers were full of cunning and trickery. One day, as Eve walked near the center of the garden, the serpent slid silently from the shadows, his eyes gleaming with hidden malice.
"Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden?"
he asked in a hissing voice. Eve looked at the serpent, startled but curious. "We may eat from the trees in the garden," she replied, "but God did say you must not eat fruit from the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it, or you will die." The serpent's eyes brightened.
"You will not surely die,"
it whispered,
"for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you too will become like gods, knowing good and evil.
The words of the serpent instantly took hold in Eve's mind. To be like God? To know what he knew was a thought too tempting to ignore. She looked at the fruit of the forbidden tree with its rich and glistening fruit, and her heart raced. Was it possible that God was holding something back? Something beyond her understanding which she deserved to know? Slowly she reached out, her fingers brushing the fruit. And in that moment, she made her choice. Plucking the fruit from the branch and raising it to her lips, she took the fatal bite. Eve handed the fruit to Adam, who now stood beside her, his face filled with confusion and wonder. Yet he too took a bite, sealing their fate together. Just as the serpent promised, their eyes were opened. But what they saw was not the wisdom of gods. It was their own vulnerability, their own nakedness, exposed and raw. They felt a feeling they'd never felt before, shame washing over them. And they covered themselves with fig leaves to hide themselves from the piercing gaze of their Creator. In the cool of the evening, God walked once again in the garden. But this time, Adam and Eve did not run to meet him. Instead, they hid among the trees, their hearts pounding with fear and regret.
Adam, where are you?
God called, his voice filled with a sorrow they had never heard before. Trembling, Adam stepped forward. "I heard you in the garden," he said, his voice barely a whisper, "and I was afraid because I was naked. So I hid."
Who told you that you were naked?
God's voice was both gentle and piercing.
Have you eaten from the tree that I commanded you not to eat from?
Adam cast his eyes downwards with the weight of his guilt pressing down on him. "The woman you put here with me, she gave me some fruit from the tree and I ate it," he admitted. God turned to Eve.
What is this you have done?
"The serpent deceived me and I ate," she replied, her voice trembling and her face pale. Full of sorrow at their disobedience, God pronounced his judgment as punishment for what they had done. The serpent would be cursed to crawl on its belly, forever despised as a symbol of lies and treachery. To Eve, God declared that she would now experience terrible pain when she gave birth and bound her to her husband. And to Adam, God put a curse on the land that had once yielded food so easily. He would now have to sweat and struggle to draw life from it until he returned to the very dust from which he was made. God made garments of animal skin for Adam and Eve, clothing them so they would not feel the sting of the elements outside Eden. And with a heavy heart, he cast them from the garden, putting a flaming sword at the entrance to stop them from ever returning and eating from the tree of life. As they walked away, the paradise that was all they had known faded behind them, and ahead lay a world much harsher, a world where they would know pain, sorrow, hardship, and death. But in their hearts, they carried a hope that one day they or their descendants could be redeemed, and the path of Eden would be open to them once more.